Hare Krishna. And now we have Holy Name in Bhagavatam with His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. He is a direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada and our Vice Chairman for the GBC. He has released amazing books such as Vrindavan, The Playground of God, and Traveling in Service of Srila Prabhupada's Volumes 1, 2, and 3. So please check them out. And now, please welcome His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami.
Hare Krishna, devotees. We have been requested by His Holiness Lokanath Swami Maharaj, one of our dearmost devotees. Oh yeah. To give a class in the context of this Holy Name week, this week in which we're celebrating the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So he asked us to give a class on a particular verse. And that verse is the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3, which is titled, Yamaraj Instructs His Messengers, verse 31. So, let us do it. We will begin right now. So, 6.331, Sanskrit. Tasmat Sankirtanam Vishnu Jagan Mangalam Amhasam Mahatam Api Kauravya Vidyaikantika Nishkritam. Translation. Shukadev Goswami continued, My dear King, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is able to uproot even the reactions of the greatest sins. Therefore, the chanting of the Sankirtan movement is the most auspicious activity in the entire universe. Please try to understand this so that others will take it seriously. Oh yes, that's significant, isn't it? What a verse. So let us read the purport, just a short purport actually, by Srila Prabhupada. We should note that although Ajamil chanted the name of Narayan imperfectly, he was delivered from all sinful reactions. The chanting of the holy name is so auspicious that it can free everyone from the reactions of sinful activities. One should not conclude that one may continue to sin with the intention of chanting Hare Krishna to neutralize the reactions. Rather, one should be very careful to be free from all sins and never think of counteracting sinful activities by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, for this is another offense. If by chance a devotee accidentally performs some sinful activity, the Lord will excuse him. But one should not intentionally perform sinful acts. Yes, well, that's the 7th offense, of course. 7th offense. Anyway, let us read the verse again. Then we'll recite just a few prayers, and then we'll say some words on this most wonderful verse. Tasmat Sankirtanam Vishnu Jagan Mangalam Amhasam Mahatam Api Kauravya Vidyaikantika Nishkritam. Shukadev Goswami continued, my dear king, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is able to uproot even the reactions of the greatest sins. Therefore, the chanting of the Sankirtan movement is the most auspicious activity in the entire universe. Please try to understand this so that others will take it seriously. Yeah, let's just adjust this thing a little. Okay. All right. There you go, devotees. So this week, we're focusing on the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. I mean, especially focusing, because actually we should always focus on the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. You've been participating in the programs these days, and you just know anyway, you've heard anyway about the importance of chanting, hearing and chanting about the Lord. You're very familiar with all these things. This is not some news to you. Prahlad Maharaj, one of our great acharyas, he says in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he actually tells Hiranyakashipu, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Achanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanavedanam. Yes, he is listing out the 9 devotional activities. So first of all, hearing, Shravanam. Hearing, then chanting. Then after hearing and chanting, you can remember. And when you remember, you feel inspired to render service. And when you're inspired to render service, then you will be inspired to worship, like in a more formal way. Then, when you're inspired to worship, you'll be inspired to offer prayers, render other services. Then appreciate how the Lord is so kind to you. He's your friend. He's helping you. And then just be ready to do anything and everything. Yes, just surrender everything to the Lord. So this is the process of devotional service as given by Prahlad Maharaj. And of course, as we know so well, it begins with hearing and then chanting. And when you chant, you hear also. So hearing and chanting, it comes first in our lives as aspiring devotees. Even actually here in South Africa just recently, a few weeks ago, we did a seminar on the eastern side of Nectar of Devotion, the first 19 chapters. And there, one point that Srila Prabhupada makes is that the quality of our chanting and hearing will be reflected in our devotional activities during the day. Words to this effect, Srila Prabhupada says, because this hearing and chanting, it is like a foundation. It's like a foundation for building the structure the structure of our Krishna consciousness. This Krishna consciousness is sometimes compared to building a building. And any building has to be, thank you, any building has to be based on a foundation. Otherwise, particularly those of you who are from Christian backgrounds, you would know very well that there was a man who built a house on sand. And anyway, it's a whole thing, a whole story. But the house fell down. But then there was a man who built his house on rock, and it stood. It really stood. So you get the idea. So yes, our development of Krishna consciousness is based on, the foundation is our hearing and chanting about Krishna. And even most particularly, our chanting of the holy names. It's interesting to note that when devotees give vows, then at the time, particularly first initiation, that's really when the devotees give vows. So the devotees vow to follow the four regulative principles, but there are four negative vows, but the only positive vow that we give is to chant not less than 16 rounds a day. We give no other positive vow. We give no other positive vow, at least in that formal sense. For example, to read the books, to render some particular service. All these things are understood, of course, and we do all these things. And Srila Prabhupada emphasized, and Krishna emphasizes all these things. Shastra emphasizes. But it's very interesting. The only positive thing we vow to do is to chant not less than 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It's significant. It's important. So this chanting, what can we say? Well, we can say a lot, actually. This chanting is just so extraordinary, so incredibly valuable, incredibly important, life-sustaining. Without chanting, we will die spiritually. And actually, without chanting, we'll die materially also. And with the death, without chanting, will go our hopes. Yes. So the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, it's really such a unique and uniquely important and uniquely valuable and uniquely powerful activity. There's just nothing like it. There's simply nothing like it. We notice just an example that we have ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON. And here we chant 16 rounds, minimum. At least those who are initiated, or you could say those who are really trying to take things seriously. On the basis of that, of that foundation in our lives in Krishna consciousness, this movement is going on. And then, of course, based on that, the inspiration comes to preach, which is another form of chanting the holy names. In this way, this movement has gone from would you say from rags to riches? No. Well, it has actually. But it's gone from one man, really, a one-man show, literally as could be, a one-man show into really quite a substantial sangha. Now, we can say organization, but really when we talk about what is ISKCON, what is the Krishna consciousness movement, we're talking about a sangha, devotees coming together and practicing Krishna consciousness together. Yeah. And it's developed and developed, even from the time that Prabhupada left this world, 1977, till now. It's multiplied in size. It's really multiplied in size. Whereas many other of the Vaishnav organizations, like the Gaudiya Vaishnav organizations, shall we say, particularly, many of them, well, some of them haven't even survived, but so many of them, they're just sort of carrying on. And there's just been no question of the dynamic development that there has been in Srila Prabhupada's movement. It's based on the chanting, because they don't chant so much. Like, if you visit the main temples in Vrindavan town, they're not really they haven't developed much. They really haven't developed much. And many of them, of course, like you go to many of the temples, there's so many deities on the altar. And why are there so many deities on the altar? Because so many other temples couldn't maintain. They were in other temples, but the devotees couldn't maintain. So they had to hand the deities over to these other temples. Yes, so it's all connected. The development, growth of the Krishna consciousness movement, as opposed to either just sort of stagnation or not much development or even collapse in some cases. It's all based on the chanting or the not chanting, as is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kali Kalira Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tara Pravatan. Interestingly enough, it's Vallabha Bhatta, of all people, glorifying Lord Chaitanya. And he says that in the Kali Yuga, the process is Krishna Nam Sankirtan, the chanting of the holy names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tara Pravatan. Without the Krishna Shakti, the potency of Lord Krishna, a person will not be able to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. So, but Lord Chaitanya did, and Srila Prabhupada did, because he had that potency based on his chanting of the holy names in disciplic succession. So this is a very important thing. And it's nice we're having this festival to remind us about the vital essence of Krishna consciousness in the form of the chanting of the holy names. So here then, this is all, we're in the sixth canto, beginning of the sixth canto, and it's the story of Ajamil. You all know the story of Ajamil. You don't need me to tell you the story of Ajamil. I mean, it's such a classic. It's such a classic story. Let me just mention one point, which may or may not have been mentioned, I don't know. But one nice point about this pastime of Ajamil is that at the end, well, it comes right in the beginning, first and second chapters of the 6th canto, and then in the 3rd chapter, it's Yamaraj and the Yamadutas discussing it all. So the thing is this, that at the end of the 5th canto, last chapter, Srila Shukadev Goswami describes to Maharaj Parikshit the hellish planets in some detail. Yeah. And there are, 28, I think, hellish planets or types of hellish planets. And, they're simply too much. Is just simply far too much. Horrific beyond words, practically. It's truly incredible. So Maharaj Parikshit, who of course is himself a very advanced devotee, he's not just, like someone we may preach to, just some general person. He is a great devotee himself. Even Prabhupada explains that Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, they're basically on the same level. But here Shukadev is instructing Parikshit because of the circumstances. Parikshit is in his very special situation. He just got cursed to die in 7 days. And Shukadev, therefore, is on hand, and he is the most, everyone at least there, even Vyasa and Narada, everyone in that assembly, they all agree that he's the one. He's best situated to instruct Parikshit. So, but Prabhupada explains that if the circumstances had been different, then Parikshit Maharaj could have instructed Shukadev Goswami. He could have done that. The level of qualification is the same. Just like I've just been reading in Brihad Bhagavatamrita how when Gopakumar comes to Dwaraka, then Narada Muni and Uddhava take him under their wing, so to speak. They take him to Uddhava's house because Uddhava is a resident of Dwaraka, and their discussion takes place, and at some point between Narada and Uddhava, they decide he must be instructed, Gopakumar must be instructed about Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan. And Uddhava is a householder. Narada is a sannyasi. And Uddhava says, well, you instruct, because you're a sannyasi, I'm just a householder. But Narada says, no, you have been there. You know the people there. So you are best situated to explain. So, Uddhava explains. So it's a similar situation there, that Shukadev is instructing Parikshit Maharaj, and it's kind of, you could say, circumstantial, the arrangement of the Lord in terms of certain circumstances. Right, so then at the end of that description of the hellish planets, Parikshit Maharaj elevated devotee, pure heart, very merciful and compassionate, practically completely like that. He feels that no, this is too much. We have to save these people. We have to save these people from going to the hellish planets. We cannot just stand by and let them go to the hellish planets. So what to do? How? What program can we institute which will save them? Then, if you're familiar with the 6th canto, it's a very amazing part of Srimad Bhagavatam, you would know that Parikshit Maharaj, when he makes that inquiry, how can we help them? What can we engage them in? First of all, Shukadev Goswami answers by saying that, well, just get them to do, what do they call it? Get them to do, yes. Get them to do, what is the term here? Anyway, atonement, I forget the Sanskrit term. Prayaschita, of course, prayaschita. Thank you. Yeah, just get them to do prayaschita, no problem. And, they've done bad things. So in essence, you could say prayaschita means just get them to do good things, to offset the bad things and just balance things out. So you come to an even keel. And then, you're sort of whatever. You're okay or something. So he suggests that this is how we can save the people who would otherwise go to hell, by getting them to do prayaschita. And you can note, it's an interesting point. Srila Prabhupada does make the point in the Bhagavatam that all the people who are living now in the Kali Yuga, if any of them somehow do not have contact with the Krishna consciousness movement, they'll all go to hell. Whoever has no contact with the Krishna consciousness movement, they'll all go to hell. Right, so Shukadev Goswami makes that suggestion, but Maharaj Parikshit does not agree. And he says, no, they must be given something else. What? What other thing can they be given which will really free them? Pull out the plants of their sinful lives at the roots. And then Shukadev Goswami says, all right, chanting the holy names. Well, actually what he does, he says, all right, well, listen to the story and you'll find out in the story. And he tells the story of Ajamil. So in other words, the way that people can be saved from hell, particularly in the Kali Yuga, the way people can be saved from hell is by the chanting of the holy names. But here now, the story to illustrate the point is the story of Ajamil. And he was not a good person. In fact, he was just a shocking person, terrible person, so sinful. But still, he is given as the example in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the most authoritative of all evidences. He has given us the evidence to show, yes, if someone should go to hell, what can save them is chant the holy names. All right. So, considering Ajamil then, The thing about Ajamil is that, yes, he did chant the holy names a bit, not too much. Ajamil never chanted 16 rounds. I don't think he chanted 1 round. Yeah, he was just... Anyway, we all know how was Ajamil. So, but the story of Ajamil shows that even if a person, we don't want the lights turned off, even if a person is as bad as Ajamil, and even if their chanting is not very good, like Ajamil's was not very good, but still, even that can save a first-class candidate for going to hell, from going to hell, but not only save them, but Ajamil went back to Godhead. He went to Vaikuntha. He went to Vaikuntha. Yeah. Yes, so this, what we're reading here, this section, it's of such fantastic importance. It's amazing, actually. I want to tell you one little story. It's a story of Ram Leela, which you may or may not be familiar with. It's a nice story. And it's really focusing on the chanting of the holy names and saving. So, Lord Ram was sent into exile, and Mother Sita and Lakshman, they went with Lord Ram, and off they went. And at some point, fairly early in the exile, they encountered Guhaka, the king of the hunters, the Nishadas, the hunter, the king of the hunters, the Nishadaraj, king of the hunters. So, and that even though he's king of the hunters and, well, hunters, that's not very nice. But still, he became very attached to Lord Ram. Very attached. And after a little while, Lord Ram, Lakshman, Sita, they went on their way. And they left Guhaka, the Nishadaraj, and his sort of kingdom. But Guhaka, Nishadaraj, he never forgot Lord Ram. He never forgot Lord Ram. Lord Ram just moved him so deeply. He was always thinking of my friend Ram, how wonderful he is. So then finally, of course, Sita was kidnapped. Hanuman located her. Lord Ram, with his army of mainly monkeys and bears, they went down to the shore there, and then they crossed to Lanka through the stones in the ocean. The stones floated. They all walked across to Lanka. They attacked. And there's this massive, massive battle. Just such a battle. And in the end, Ravana was killed. Sita was rescued. Very good. And Lord Ram and Sita, of course, it's all a very, very long story, but Lord Ram, Sita, Lakshman, and everyone, they went to Ayodhya, and they entered Ayodhya. They were greeted by Bharat, and in they went, and things unfolded, and then Lord Ram was to be enthroned, installed as the king. So, and of course, this is just massive, gigantic event. And so this huge organization and everything was being put together, and so many people, and very elaborate and of an extremely high standard, etc., etc. And Guhaka, he was out there in the forest. But somehow or other, he got word that this is going to happen. My dear old friend, Ram, has finished his exile. He's returned to Ayodhya. Now he's going to be installed as the king. How wonderful. So Guhaka, the Nishada Raj, he was just in ecstasy. And he decided, I got to go. I got to be there for the installation. I got to be there. Must do. So he jumped on his chariot and he flew, practically, literally. He just flew from his place out there in the forest. He flew all the way to Ayodhya. And like at breakneck speed. Whoa, not caring for the speed limits, if there are any police around with speed traps or anything. He just practically flew into Ayodhya. And even when he reached Ayodhya, the actual city, he flew through Ayodhya. Oh, Krishna. Ram. And he was just flying through the streets, practically knocking people over. People had to just dive out of the way. And then as he's flying through, he came just flying out into one square, some big public square. And here, Vishvamitra was organizing all the paraphernalia and the setup and the everything for the yagyas, for the installation. Because, it's Treta Yuga, it's yagya time. So there were going to be many yagyas, and with all sorts of mandalas on the ground, and things positioned in this way and that, auspiciousness installed for the yagyas. So Vishvamitra had done that, had done or was doing, and who should come flying through on his chariot wildly but Guhaka, the Nishada Raj, the king of the hunters. And as fate would have it, one of the wheels of the chariot crossed over one of the corners of one of the yagya arenas, mandala type things which had been laid out on the ground. So one of the wheels just came flying, crashing through, and broke up the corner of that yagya arena. So Vishvamitra, Guhaka, He didn't even notice. He was just in too much ecstasy. Ram, my Lord Ram. Oh, can't wait to see him again. But Vishvamitra, he was really, as they say, fried, completely had it. And he went to Lord Ram. We have done so much to prepare for these yagyas, sacred yagyas. We have spent so much time, energy, and great wealth has been used for setting up these yagyas, which we're going to perform just very shortly. And now this happens. This hunter comes recklessly through on his chariot, and one wheel crosses the corner of one of the yajna arenas and contaminates it, and we have to do it all again. This is aparad. This is mega aparad. This person has to be captured, and this person has to be punished by you. You are the king. You have to do it. So Lord Ram, the personification of duty, he just immediately, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Lord Ram, he dressed himself in battle dress, full battle dress. And he took his bow and his arrows. The arrows which were not just arrows, they were astras. All like celestial weapons, including the supreme celestial weapon, the Brahmastra, the personal weapon of Lord Brahma, which Lord Ram had used, that very weapon, to kill Ravana. And then he retrieved it. Yes. So, there's Lord Ram, full battle dress, bow and arrows. Vishvamitra's with him. They get on the chariot, Lord Ram's chariot. All right, let's find this man. And Guhaka, he's just happily moving around. And then he hears this news. Did you hear that you have sort of defiled one of the yajna arenas? And Vishvamitra is just too upset. And so he has ordered Lord Ram that he must kill you now. And they're coming for you now. Somehow Guhaka heard this. And he asked, what can I do? Can't someone help me? And everyone was saying, no. There's no one who can help you. But one person said, actually, there is one person who may be able to help you. That is Hanuman. Quickly go find Hanuman and ask Hanuman, please, just beg him, please, somehow turn the heart, turn the mind of Lord Ram away from this. Please beg him to spare me. So Hanuman said, wow, that. You want me, a monkey, to contradict Vishvamitra? Topmost Brahman? Well, I don't think I can manage that. I'm sorry. But Guhaka begged him and pleaded and begged and cried and cried. And Hanuman agreed, all right, I'll try. So they're sitting there now, somewhere. And Guhaka Nishadaraj, he's just crying. Oh no, my beloved Ram is going to kill me. And Hanuman is sitting and he's crying. And he's just chanting, Ram, Ram, Ram. No, my Lord Ram, don't do this. Ram, Ram. Crying like that. And who should appear on the scene but Lord Ram on his chariot in full battle dress with his bow and quiver full of astras, and right next to him Vishvamitra, who's still in this mood. So Vishvamitra tells Ram, there he is, kill him. And Lord Ram, like we said, the personality, personified duty. Yes. Picked up his bow, took one astra from the quiver, on his bow, pulled it back and aimed it and released the astra at Guhaka. And Guhaka is just crying and crying, oh my Lord, no. And Hanuman's just chanting and chanting, Ram, 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 no, Ram. And the astra is flying. And Hanuman is chanting. And you know what happened? The astra, it disappeared. It just disappeared in mid-air. And Lord Ram and Vishvamitra, they're taken aback. How is it possible? It was some weapon of some demigod. And Vishvamitra said, take another astra. So Lord Ram took another astra, put it on his bow, aimed it, and released it at the Nishadaraj. And the arrow, the astra, is flying. And Guhaka is crying and crying. And Hanuman is chanting and chanting and chanting. Ram, 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 no, Ram. And the arrow, the astra, is flying. And then the astra, it disappeared. And again, Lord Ram and Vishvamitra, they thought, no, there's something really going on here. So, but Vishvamitra, not a man to be easily disappointed, he said to Lord Ram, take another astra. And Lord Ram took another astra, put it on his bow, aimed it at Guhaka, released it, and the arrow is flying, the astra is flying. And the Nishadaraj, Guhaka, is just crying and crying. And Hanuman is just chanting and chanting and chanting. And the astra is flying right at him. And suddenly, it disappeared. And to cut what could be an even longer story short. I think you've got the idea. Eventually, devotees, listen, eventually, the only weapon left was the Brahmastra. The very same Brahmastra that Lord Ram had killed Ravana with. The highest weapon, most powerful weapon in this universe. And Vishwamitra told him, take the Brahmastra. Lord Ram took the Brahmastra. It's a shocking weapon, shocking looking weapon. And he placed it on his bow and pulled it back and aimed at the Nishadaraj, Guhaka. And he released the arrow, and the arrow is flying. And the Nishadaraj is just crying and crying. And Hanuman is chanting and chanting and chanting. And the Brahmastra is flying, and then suddenly, you guessed it, it disappeared also. So then Vishwamitra decided there is a special divine arrangement here. This is not meant to be. Leave him. So Guhaka's life was saved on the basis of the chanting of Hanuman. Chanting in a mood, you could say, like a child crying out for the mother, a child in desperation crying out for the mother. So it's a very interesting story. It's a very nice story. I like this story. And it's a very educational story. We can learn a lot from it. That this is the Kali Yuga. The process is to chant the holy names. So we must chant the holy names as our prime activity, be it Japa, be it Kirtan in the temple, be it Sankirtan out in the streets, in the cities, in public. But this is the essence of our lives. This is the foundation for our lives in Krishna consciousness. So we must do it. But there's a quality to that chanting. We don't want to just take advantage of the Ajamil situation and think, well, he just chanted like that, so I can just chant in any way. I'll be okay. We mustn't do that. We really mustn't do that. We must chant from the hearts, really taking shelter of the Lord, taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara, taking shelter of our spiritual masters, taking shelter of the devotees in the process of devotional service, and really chant from the heart as if our lives depend on it. Because devotees, they do. Our lives depend on our chanting. On the basis of our chanting, whatever is the quality, and the quantity of our chanting, whatever is these things, we're creating our future in those terms, by the mercy of Prabhupada, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So this we must consider. This we must consider. As Prabhupada said, to chant like a child crying out for the mother, or you could say, like Hanuman crying out to Lord Ram, please be merciful, please be kind, and please save me, help me. Just like I'm sure you've probably all seen, at least once, maybe many times, a child who gets into some situation and they become so overwhelmed with distress that you see and you hear, and you can tell, this child thinks that if my mother does not come now, I am definitely going to die, and that's it. It's the end. The whole world is finished. That sort of mood. This is what Prabhupada talked about. Now, we are here, and, we're living our lives in Krishna consciousness, and we have our ups and downs and so on and so forth. And we have our problems. Who could say they have no difficulties or they never have difficulties in trying to execute Krishna consciousness? Of course, everyone does. And when there's difficulty, it's a stimulus to take shelter more, a stimulus to not continue with the habit that we have from material life of thinking, I'm okay, I'm all right. For a devotee, the devotee version, I'm all right in Krishna consciousness, I'm chanting, I'm doing everything, I'm all right. But actually we should be chanting with that deeper mood, in that deeper mood. But we may think, why? Because I'm okay. But the point is that actually we're not okay. We are definitely not okay. Srila Prabhupada one time told one devotee, as I recall, our Sridhar Maharaj, he said, the difference between you and me is that you can fall down at any time. But Prabhupada said, but I will never fall down. So we might think that we've been like, even myself, I've been practicing devotional service many years. Lokanath Maharaj has been practicing for many years, maybe 50 years. Some of our devotees have been practicing for more than 50 years without falling down, maintaining the standards. And of course, whoever of us, we've been chanting for however long, and we may feel, yes, I'm okay. But actually in this world, padam yad vipadam nate sham, there's danger at every step. And we should never become overconfident. But rather we should pray to the Lord, please help me to understand my precarious
Put Maharaj on unmute, Nadigaur Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Put Maharaj on unmute.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Giriraj Maharaj. Please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to your holiness. Welcome Maharaj. I'd like to commence with just inviting Jagannath Kirtananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, dear Giriraj Swami. Thank you for coming today. We're so blessed to have you. So, just for everybody that don't know, we now have Japa retreat with our very special guest. Hare Krishna, dear Giriraj Swami. Thank you for coming today. We're so blessed to have you. We now have our Japa retreat with our special guest, His Holiness Giriraj Swami. Now have Japa retreat with our very special guest. Hare Krishna, dear Giriraj Swami. Apologies, we had some problem with unmuting and muting, so I will start again. So now we should be able to hear. And now we have Japa retreat with our special guest, His Holiness Giriraj Swami. Giriraj Swami is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada and an initiating guru in ISKCON. In the early days in the movement, he was appointed as president of ISKCON Mumbai and a trustee of Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. He has made significant contributions to Srila Prabhupada's mission, and most notably overseeing the development of Hare Krishna land in Juhu, Mumbai. And also previously, he has served as a member of the governing body commission, the GBC. Presently, Maharaj, he's based in Southern California, and Giriraj Swami now focuses on writing, which was one of the main personal instructions that he received from Srila Prabhupada. So Giriraj Swami is an author of Watering the Seed and Many Moons, and is working on several other publications. So please do check it out. You can get him on BBD Book Trust. You can get it on Amazon. Just please do check that out. And Giriraj Swami also has taught at the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education and continues to lecture and give presentations at Japa retreats and workshops around the world. So we are so grateful to have you, Maharaj, on today. So please, if I could welcome you, and please everyone give a big Hari Bol to His Holiness Giriraj Swami.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for inviting me to this Japa retreat. And I will begin by singing the Mangala Charana prayers and leading a short kirtan. And then I will read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam about the chanting of the holy names. And then we will discuss Japa. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupa Sagujatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sidivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha Tamam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Srila Gurudeva. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Satrasri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Satrasri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, my dear devotees, before I continue, I will leave for about a minute, and in the meantime, you can chant Japa, and I'll be right back.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare. Hare Rama,
Rama,
Rama Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Hare
Hare.
Hare. Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
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 Krishna
Krishna,
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 Hare
Krishna,
Hare.
Hare Hare. Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Guys,
Hare
someone
Rama,
was chanting very beautiful japa.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
So
Hare.
I will read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam about the chanting of the holy names. It has a long purport, and I won't read it all, but I will read enough to give an idea of how we should chant japa, based on Srimad Bhagavatam and our previous acharyas, and based on the Padma Purana. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, the first step in God realization. Text 11. Etan nirvidyamananam ichatam akuto bayam yoginam nirnitam harinamanukirtanam. Translation. O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. So the verse refers to different categories of people who will find the chanting of the holy name as the doubtless and fearless way of success. And if you think of yourself in terms of these categories, you will find that you definitely fit in one, and probably in a combination of them. So the three categories are those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. So you're covered. We're all covered. This verse is for us. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, Sri Shukadev Goswami recommends the transcendental chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Here it is mentioned that one should constantly chant the holy name of the Lord after hearing it from authorities. This means that hearing from authorities is the first essential. The process is recommended not only for the progressive students in different departments of ideological success, but also for those who are already successful in their achievement as fruitive workers, as philosophers, or as devotees of the Lord. So in this verse, there are many important words, but one is anu. Anu means to follow, and anu means continuous. So anu in the sense of to follow, like Rupanuga, we are followers of Rupa Goswami. So we want to chant following the ways of the great authorities. And that is explained in the purport. And specifically, it means to chant without offense. Srila Jiva Goswami instructs that the chanting of the holy name of the Lord should be done loudly. Once I asked Srila Prabhupada that, when I chant, sometimes my mind wanders. So I asked Srila Prabhupada what I should do. And he replied, chant loudly. In other words, chant so loud that the sound of the holy name drives away all other thoughts and distractions. Srila Jiva Goswami instructs that chanting of the holy name of the Lord should be done loudly, and it should be performed defenselessly as well, as recommended in the Padma Purana. One can deliver himself from the effects of all sins by surrendering himself to the Lord. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayisami ma sucha. One can deliver himself from the effects of all sins by surrendering himself unto the Lord. One can deliver himself from all offenses at the feet of the Lord by taking shelter of his holy name. But one cannot protect himself if one commits an offense at the feet of the holy name. See, the holy name has feet because the holy name is a person. The holy name is Krishna or Radha and Krishna. Such offenses are mentioned in the Padma Purana as being 10 in number. The first offense is to vilify the great devotees who have preached about the glories of the holy name. This is called sadhu ninda, and this is a very important offense to avoid. Some of the offenses are committed while we chant, such as inattention, and some are offenses that we probably, if we do commit them, I hope not, but that we would commit outside of the time when we're chanting. So in other words, we should mold our lives in such a way and direct our consciousness in such a way that we don't commit any offenses against the holy name. And then our japa will be very smooth and easy and relishable. I won't read them all, but in our morning programs, as Srila Prabhupada instituted them in ISKCON, the devotees read the list of the 10 offenses after Mangalarti. And just the reading of the 10 offenses helps the devotees to avoid the offenses, in part because it makes them conscious of the offenses, and in part because just the reading of the list itself is purifying and is an implicit prayer to avoid offenses. The 10th offense is to become uninterested in the holy name of the Lord, even after hearing of the transcendental of the holy name. The effect of chanting the holy name of the Lord is perceived by the chanter as liberation from the conception of false egoism. False egoism is exhibited by thinking oneself to be the enjoyer of the world and thinking everything in the world to be meant for the enjoyment of one's self only. The whole materialistic world is moving under such false egoism of I and mine, but the factual effect of chanting the holy name is to become free from such misconceptions. So if we observe the wanderings of our mind during japa, we will find that the underlying psychology is that we think that we are the enjoyers, we are the proprietors, and we are the controllers, which is false ego. And the mind is the agent of the false ego. And so the mind will wander into those thoughts or patterns of thought that will support the false ego. But as Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, the actual effect of proper chanting is that one becomes free from false ego, from the absorption in I, me, and mine, and feels oneself to be the eternal servant of Krishna. Jive Sarapai Krishna Nityadas, the eternal servant of the holy name. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states, because Sanskrit is such a language that the words can be divided in different ways. So in the list, in the Nectar of Devotion, for example, Being inattentive while chanting is not one of the 10, but devotees, when they read the list, they always add it is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his breakdown of the Sanskrit in the 10 offenses, includes pramadaha, inattention, as one of the 10. And he says that if one is attentive while chanting, all the other offenses will be eradicated. But if one is inattentive while chanting, the other offenses will flourish. So that is our first priority when we chant Japa, to articulate each word clearly and to hear each word, each name attentively. And when the mind wanders, as the Bhagavad Gita says, one should bring it back to the self. And there are 3 stages in chanting. One is Nam Aparad, that is the offensive stage. Then next is Nam Abbas, which is the clearing stage. And then ultimately Shuddhanam, which is the pure stage. And the clearing stage is defined as making a consistent effort to bring the mind back to the holy name. If we don't make that effort, then we're in the offensive stage of chanting, which is better than not chanting for sure, but it's not where we want to be. So we want to come at least to the clearing stage, which means making that constant effort to bring the mind back to the holy name when it wanders. Yes, I've been fortunate to be associated with many wonderful devotees in the course of conducting Japa retreats or Japa workshops, such as His Holiness Sachinandan Swami, who he gives very good advice about posture and so many other elements, which I won't repeat. But one thing I would like to say, because in Japa there's quality and quantity, but generally the more you chant, the better your chanting becomes. But Srila Prabhupada has given such emphasis on chanting 16 rounds that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 22, text 113 purport, he writes, one may have other duties to perform under the direction of the spiritual master, but he must first abide by the spiritual master's order to chant a certain number of rounds. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we have recommended that the neophyte chant at least 16 rounds. This chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Because the verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is a famous one. Smartavya satatam Vishnu Vishmartavya Najatuchit, that one should always remember Krishna and never forget him at any time. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying that this chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Of all the regulative principles, the spiritual masters order to chant at least 16 rounds is most essential. So that we should do. And of course, we want to chant with quality. Generally, we do better if we rise early in the morning and chant during the Brahma Muhurta period, which begins an hour and a half, approximately an hour and a half before sunrise. And to chant in front of the deities, chant before Tulsi Devi, and chant with other devotees who are serious about chanting, who have a taste for the holy name. So these arrangements can support our japa. Now, one, I guess you could say, anecdote related to the chanting of 16 rounds concerns Nanda Kumar Prabhu, who was Srila Prabhupada's personal servant in the 1970s. He relates, "It was the first time I had ever missed chanting 16 rounds. I had completed 14 and was so tired that I rationalized that it was better to take rest and make them up the next day, as we had been told we could do." And yes, that's a fact, that if by chance one fails to complete 16 rounds one day, you can make up the missed rounds the next day. Ananda Kumar Prabhu continues, "When I went into Srila Prabhupada's room early the next morning, the first thing His Divine Grace said to me was, 'So, you are chanting all your rounds?' As always, he knew everything without requiring any outside information. I told him about my missing 2 rounds the previous day and that I was going to make them up that day. Srila Prabhupada said, 'When you are regularly chanting 16 rounds, it is like a young child learning to walk with the help of the mother, because the mother is holding the child's hand. When the child starts to fall, the mother holds him up, and he doesn't actually fall. It is the same with chanting. If you are completing 16 rounds and start to fall down, Krishna will hold you up and not allow that to happen." Ananda Kumar Prabhu continued, "Then, with his eyes open very wide and a transcendental move of his hand back and forth in front of his face, His Divine Grace said, 'However, if you are not chanting at least 16 rounds every day, your whereabouts are unknown.'" So we want to be faithful to our vow of chanting at least 16 rounds a day. And we want to chant those rounds without offense. We have a little time, but I thought it could be fruitful if we took some time for discussion. If any of you have any comments or thoughts or realizations or any questions, because this, yes, it's also mentioned in Shastra that discussing the chanting of the holy names is beneficial for the chanting. So these discussions actually support our practice of japa. So you can think about what you would like to say or ask, and I'll be back in a minute.
See now. Haribo, who's coordinating? We'll take questions, or Yunana Kampa, you're there? All right. Hello, Haribo.
Ji Gurudev, I am here. I'm here. The questions, the devotees can unmute themselves when they can raise their hand and they will get unmuted, and the questions they can ask themselves.
So who will?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Anadi Gaur Prabhu will unmute them. He'll do that.
Okay, so get ready, devotees. Tell them.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, everyone. Please get ready. When Giriraj Maharaj comes back, you can in fact, you can raise your hands now if you have a question, so that when Maharaj comes back, there are 2 hands up already.
Okay, line them up. Yeah.
So will you call on the participants who have raised their hands? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. I am Gopishwar Das from Faridabad, India. Maharaj, it's very purifying to have your darshan and hear from you. It was wonderful, sweet, and enlightening talk. Maharaj, I have one question, if you permit.
Sure.
Not directly related to the offense part, but there's one very sweet anecdote that we have heard about Your Holiness from Mumbai time, and also His Holiness Loknath Swami Maharaj was there. When we are told that you were the temple president and Maharaj was the pujari, head pujari, and there was one big business tycoon who came, but you said that you were busy having an appointment with somebody, and that somebody was Krishna. Maharaj, can you please enlighten us on that, Maharaj?
Yes. Yes, this big man came and he wanted to meet me. But I did send the message that I was engaged. And that engagement was chanting. As you said, I was in a meeting with the holy name. And so I couldn't immediately meet with that big man. And His Holiness Loknath Swami was impressed by that. So, yes, our japa time is our time with Krishna. That's very important. That's very important. But it's also very important to, of course, this would be unusual, but it could happen that a Vaishnav comes while we're chanting japa. And at that stage, we should receive the Vaishnav. Yes. And if we don't receive the Vaishnav, we could be offending the Vaishnav, which in turn is an offense against the holy name. So we should be very careful about our relationships with devotees, and definitely avoid the first offense, which is sadhu ninda, blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name. His Grace Burijan Das also, conducts Japa retreats and seminars. And at one such seminar, he gave the students 2 homework assignments, which related to the most crucial aspects of Japa. The first assignment was to observe or monitor their criticizing of devotees, and the other was to observe or monitor their chanting with attention. So the next morning, he asked the devotees how they did on their homework assignment, and one of the devotees said that she had every intention of not criticizing devotees. And I should mention that hearing criticism of devotees is also an offense, not just speaking critically of devotees, but even hearing criticism of devotees is an offense. So she said she had every intention of not criticizing devotees, but that it was in the environment. In other words, she was with people who were criticizing devotees. So Burijan Prabhu replied, you have one of 2 choices. You can change the environment. But if you want to change the environment, good luck, because the environment doesn't want to change. The environment wants to criticize. So the other alternative is to remove yourself from that environment. And that is a good instruction for us if we happen to be in a situation where there's criticism of devotees. Of course, ideally, which would also be beneficial for the others, you could change the subject. But if the environment wants to criticize, then you really should leave that environment. Yeah, should really avoid that sadhu ninda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You answered my second part of question already. Like Srila Prabhupada, you understood, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj. From Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Next person.
Hare Krishna Maharaj ji, I am Jaideep Dalvi from India. My question is that for beginners, should we directly chant 16 rounds or should we increase the rounds gradually?
Oh, yes. The minimum 16 rounds, but if we're able, we can increase, and we should increase. In fact, I recall a very edifying conversation with His Holiness Lokanath Swami and Srila Prabhupada on a morning walk on Juhu Beach. And His Holiness Lokanath Swami said to Srila Prabhupada, you have prescribed 16 rounds. And Srila Prabhupada replied, not 16 rounds, minimum 16 rounds. So then Lokanath Swami responded, well, but there are other devotees who are fixing other minimums for themselves. And Srila Prabhupada said, that's fine. You can increase the minimum, but you cannot decrease the minimum. And then Ramananda Prabhu, who was on the walk, he said that the chanting of the extra rounds should not interfere with the devotee's other service. Chanting is service, but the devotee may have other service. And then Srila Prabhupada said that if that devotee is approached to do some service, and the devotee says,
I'm asking.
excuse me, I can't do the service because I'm busy imitating Haridas Thakur. That is not very good. Because earlier, Lokanath Swami, in discussing this, increasing the minimum quota, he mentioned, Haridas Thakur. How do we know if we're imitating Haridas Thakur? And Srila Prabhupada said, imitation is not bad. If you're imitating Haridas Thakur in terms of increasing your chanting, that's not bad. That's good. But then later, when Brahmananda Prabhu brought up about avoiding service, Srila Prabhupada said that, sorry, I can't do it. I can't do any service. I'm busy imitating Haridas Thakur. Srila Prabhupada said that is very bad. Because our chanting is a prayer for service. But chanting is service. So chanting is a prayer for more service, could mean more chanting, but also other service as well. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. This is Shamalangi Devi Dasi from Dubai, Damodar Desh. Maharaj, I have a question. My question has two parts to it. I have two things to ask you. So one is that, early morning hours, like before around 7, the Srinathji temple is open in Dubai. So I usually go for darshan. So my question is that when I park my car, which is like a little far away, and as I walk to the temple, I do my chanting on my beads while I'm walking. Can I count that in my 16 rounds as I do it in the morning? And second thing is that as you are chanting and you're walking to the temple, you're taking darshan, you do meet Vaishnavas, some senior devotees also, and they greet you, they talk to you, maybe, how are you? So can I reply to them? I'm doing my chanting as I'm walking to the temple. And as I'm returning back, if someone talks to me, so maybe that time, should I not count that round? But I should greet them, right, Maharaj? That's what I want to ask you.
Yes. You can count chanting while walking. Srila Prabhupada said that the best is to chant while sitting down. And he said second best is to chant while standing up, which might be necessary if we feel drowsy while we're sitting down. And then he said third best is to chant while moving around or walking. But there are nice, there's a nice video of Srila Prabhupada chanting in his quarters in Los Angeles and New Dwarka, in which he's walking. So in one sense, there are no hard and fast rules. The main thing is to be able to focus. But in general, he said best is to sit, second best is to stand, and third best is to move around. As far as greeting devotees, I think you have to. Otherwise, again, they might feel offended, which in turn is an offense against the holy name. But you can try to, get up early and chant before before you take your walk and perhaps meet devotees on the way. A very good example is Svavas Prabhu, the temple president in Los Angeles. He gets up at 2 every morning and chants his rounds before Mangalarti. Because as the temple president, he never knows what might come up. And he doesn't want to take any chances, so he chants his rounds before Mangalarti. So if we can do that, chant before we engage in other activities that could, take us away from chant. It's always good to chant more. So, you can always chant extra while you're walking to the temple. But yeah, you have to, you may have to greet Vaishnavas, respond to them if they greet you on the way. But all devotees, I don't think you would do it, but please do not disturb other devotees when they're chanting their japa. Don't be a japa terrorist. Let them chant their japa in peace. Disturb them only if it's an extreme emergency, but otherwise, let them chant peacefully.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Giriraj Maharaj. I have a question from YouTube. It's from somebody called Madhu. And he says, I can't chant my 16 rounds because of nerve issue in my hands. Please suggest what I shall do.
Oh.
So
well,
yeah. I'm
Please
thinking
continue.
he cannot hold the beads and chant on the japa beads. That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Well, we have to chant. We want to chant. And of course, the ideal is to chant on Japa Mala, especially Tulsi Mala, that engages the sense of touch. Srila Prabhupada said that when two senses are engaged, the mind will be captured. So one sense is the sense of touch on the chanting beads, and the other sense is the sense of hearing, as we attempt to listen while we chant. In fact, one very nice statement that Srila Prabhupada gave about chanting japa was, just try to hear yourself chant sincerely. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, His Holiness Satchidananda Swami said that at a japa retreat that we were facilitating together. Just try to hear yourself chanting sincerely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is 1:30. Well, the hour is over. I'm looking at my clock and I'm in a different time zone as well. So what I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the World Holy Name Festival. But if we have time after that and we don't get cut off, would you consider taking more questions?
I would love to.
All right. So thank you, dear Giriraj Maharaj, for such a great explanation, inspiration and motivation for us to help us go deeper in our chanting. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Your Holiness on. And now we know now why you are the Vaishnav that everybody wants on the Japa retreats. And we are so, so fortunate that we had you today. So on behalf of the World Holy Name Festival and His Holiness Lokanath Swami Maharaj, we thank you so much for joining us.
You'd like to thank me?
Okay, so Maharaj will continue to take questions. The next person can come up, Anadi Gaur Prabhu.
Yes, yes.
There's one Bhakta Chaitanya Das is raising his hand.
Pranath Prabhu.
Sound.
Vraj Kumar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. I guess I'm audible. I'm very much grateful for the wonderful association you have given me, Maharaj. I have one question. I would like to get some guidelines on this. But Maharaj, when we come into the service of management, that sometimes we tend to find mistakes of other Vaishnavas for the purpose of the service, but it can tend to offenses. So kindly Maharaj, can you help me in this guidelines on this?
Yeah, well, in every service, we should be in the mood of being the servant of the servant. And even if we have to engage a devotee in service or correct a devotee in relation to service, we should do so in the mood of being the devotee's servant. And if we do so in that mood, then most likely the devotees will not feel offended, and it won't disturb our relationships. Should be humble, even when we're engaging another devotee or correcting another devotee. We should be humble. I was a temple president in Juhu, Bombay. You have to do that, but it doesn't have to be. If you're in the mood of lording it over, then they'll feel it. But if you're really in the mood of humble service, they shouldn't mind.
Just want to see.
I can't say it like that.
Now we need to begin.
Okay, let me 1 second.
Yeah, we are over time.
Are we done with the questions?
There are more if we have time. I have time.
Okay.
There's one Bhakti Chaitanya who's been
Hare
raising
Krishna.
his hand.
Okay, let's
Hare
do
Krishna.
let's do Bhakti Chaitanya Prabhu, and then that would be the last question. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Thank you so much, because the other session has already started. So we'll do one more question and then
Sure.
we can.
Sure.
Okay. Bhakti Chaitanya Prabhu.
Bhakti Chaitanya, please unmute. Yes.
Huh.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisance. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, my question is that as we know, one word of Hare Krishna Mahamantra diminishes all unearths, offenses. So why did not come any attraction to the Lord? So how we understand this?
Oh, yes. This point is discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Queen Kunti's prayers to Lord Krishna. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that according to Shastra, by chanting one holy name of the Lord, one is able